I have a serious question with this story. It's titled by the Tampa Bay Times, "We Should Hang Ilhan Omar, Florida Congressional Candidate Writes in Fundraising Letter." I do not believe Republican George Buck should have said this. I think the conspiracies around Ilhan Omar are just that. You want to investigate? Fine. It's a complicated story. I'll give you the backstory to this. But basically, what this guy is saying is that if you're a traitor, then the law states you will be tried, and if found guilty, you will be hanged or you will be put to death. In which case, we have kind of a conundrum. I think it violates civility to start calling for hanging your opponents because you think they're traitors. I think if he wants to say we should investigate whether or not they're traitors, fine, I'm on board with that, okay? But jumping the gun to saying you should hang people is dangerous talk, okay? We got a really contentious politics going on right now. You got the left and the right at each other's necks. Adam Schiff spying on Devin Nunes, like what's even going on? The last thing we need is rhetoric about hanging the traitors. But I'm concerned we're going to move in this direction, and it's going to get to that point. It's kind of scary. But I will say, the reason why it's a discussion is it's in the law. It's not an exaggeration to say that if you're a traitor, you'd be hanged. So there's a challenge in, yes, if someone is accused of being a traitor and we prove it, you can hang them. That's part of that's there's a law. It's traitors. You get this. So personally, I think it's a crossing a civility line. But also, are we really going to punish people because, Ilhan Omar's opponent got banned from Twitter, and now this guy's being booted by the Republicans, and it's kind of like, man, how do you deal with this? Look, I'll say this. Here's the story. It was reported. There is a deposition that in a Florida court, this guy, Alan Bender, who's a Kuwaiti-born Canadian businessman, said that Qatari officials bragged to him Ilhan Omar was on their payroll, and that she was funneling information to Qatar and Iran and pledged allegiance to Erdogan of Turkey. That's just hearsay. That's one guy saying, I heard from other people. No proof. However, it was a sworn statement in a U.S. court alleging a conspiracy to commit treason, in which case, wouldn't the reasonable response say, if this is true, this person will be, hanged or whatever, or tried? The problem with the story for me, first is get some real evidence, get away from the hearsay. I don't want to hear it. And I'm concerned this escalating rhetoric is bad news and it's going to escalate tensions, which it is. But a lot of people do have concerns that, look, if somebody's going to testify under oath in a U.S. court, we don't just ignore that. And I think then it would be fair to say we should investigate Ilhan Omar, not call for, trying of treason. If we get to that point, we investigate if we get to that point. So let's read this story from the Tampa Bay Times. They say, a fundraising letter sent last week by the campaign of George Buck, a Republican running for Congress in St. Petersburg, suggested a member of the House of Representatives and other Democrats should be executed. Yeah, he did. The lengthy email dated November 26 repeated an unsupported accusation that U.S. Rep. Ilhan Omar, a Somali-born Democrat representing Minnesota, secretly worked for the country of Qatar, however you pronounce it, and should be gravely punished for it. We should hang these traitors where they stand, the email said. It is unclear who the other traitors are, but the email spotlights the man Buck is challenging, U.S. Rep. Charlie Crist, as well as House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and freshman U.S. Reps AOC, Ayanna Pressley, Rashida Tlaib, along with Omar. The three men of color are often singled out by President Donald Trump as political enemies. Yes, but come on. First, Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar have been accused of anti-Semitism. And all of them have been accused of making inappropriate statements. There's a bunch of campaign finance violations between them, and they're far left, bombastic, and yes, high profile. So sure, people are going to point them out. When reached for comment Tuesday morning, Buck said he didn't write the email and that fundraising pitches are sent by his campaign manager, whom he declined to name. That was not me. I did not see that, Buck said. I would never talk like that. The email was in the format of a letter signed by Buck. Later in the day, Buck sent the Tampa Bay Times a lengthy statement that appeared to stand by the fundraising email. The statement included the constitutional definition of treason and the federal punishment, quote, death, or shall be imprisoned not less than 5 years and fined under this title, but not less than $10,000. Anyone who commits treason against the United States should be tried to the full extent of the law, Buck said. He declined to elaborate further. So herein lies the big problem. Whether or not we should investigate. So first, the Daily Caller and several right-wing journalists, like right-leaning journalists, and I normally don't like to, claim people are journalists of one persuasion or another, unless, well, I take that back. That's not true. You got your leftists, you got your right-wingers. So these right-wing journalists said they found no evidence of this. However, the Jerusalem Post published a story saying a federal court heard this. We then saw Daily Caller, which is Tucker Carlson's publication, attempt to push back on it, saying, come on, this is a fake story. It's dubious. A reporter for the Jerusalem Post said, listen, if somebody testified in U.S. court, then they did. And if the story says Florida court hears Ilhan Omar did X, well, then you've got a conundrum because you can't just ignore it if someone tells under oath this happened. If you want to start making assumptions that this person lied, what do we do? Are we then going to investigate literally every single person who makes a claim to a court because you don't like the direction they're pointing or what they're saying? If a Republican testifies under oath, is the immediate reaction from Democrats going to say he lied under oath, therefore investigate him instead of investigate their claims? This is a challenge. If Ilhan Omar is being accused, and it's by someone willing to say that, albeit they're not an American citizen, well, I think a cursory glance is required. I think in both directions, but for the most part towards Ilhan Omar, especially considering her strange past and the campaign finance violations. I think we have grounds to at least look into it, right? Let's read on. The fundraising email uses the same kind of violent language that prompted Twitter to permanently suspend from its social media platform Danielle Stella, Omar's Republican challenger in Minnesota. Like Stella, Buck referenced an unverified story that Omar is an asset of Qatar who passed information to Iran. Omar has denied the report, which was circulated by the Jerusalem Post, but has not been corroborated by American news outlets or the U.S. government. Not true. The story is that a court heard the claim. That's a fact. The deposition exists. Some people don't trust it. Fine. But the story's legit. Now, whether or not the hearsay is legit, that's another issue. Okay, that's why I said at least it merits looking into, right? They say the positions and statements of Omar, who is Muslim and often speaks critically of Israel, are frequently chronicled by the newspaper. Yeah, it's the Jerusalem Post. Buck describes himself as a conservative, America First Republican and a veteran on his campaign page. He is one of 6 Republicans in the Pinellas County running to challenge Crist for Florida's 13th congressional district. Buck was the GOP nominee in 2018, but lost decisively to Crist, a St. Petersburg Democrat and former governor, in the general election. The fundraising email accuses Crist of being responsible for this, meaning Omar, because he voted for the current House leadership. It falsely says Democratic leadership includes Ocasio-Cortez, the New York congresswoman who has become a frequent recipient of Republican ire, and goes on to claim Crist declared himself a Democratic socialist, which is also untrue. But if you want to argue that AOC is leadership, colloquially she is. So I get it. If he's making false statements, call him out. But Ocasio-Cortez, as far as anyone is concerned, is the highest profile Democrat at this point. Sorry, it's true. Maybe Bernie Sanders. But AOC's got 5+ million followers. She may not be in an official leadership position. But everybody knows where the Democrats stand. In his 2020 campaign, Buck has raised $180,000. He is listed on the National Republican Congressional Committee's website as one of the party's young guns, although he's kind of old. A distinction reserved for those running in competitive districts who have met certain campaign organization thresholds. The Republican committee did not immediately respond to a request for comment. After the story published, Pinellas County GOP Chairman Todd Jennings wrote on Facebook, "There is no room for this kind of inflammatory rhetoric in either political party," and I agree. No one should ever condone a candidate's call for violence. Disagree. I agree with saying, hold your horses. We do not want to escalate tensions. I do not agree with saying he was calling for violence. The U.S. death penalty is not violence. It technically is, right? But I think it's absurd to say follow the law and its penalties and you're being violent. Now, I, for one, oppose the death penalty to a great degree, philosophically, ethically, every fiber of my being. But I recognize there's a big difference between my personal views and moral philosophies and what the law is. And I don't think it's calling for violence if you say uphold the law, even if it means, being hanged. It's the second time in a week that a Tampa Bay Republican has suggested Trump's political opponents should be hanged. In a Facebook post, first reported by the alt weekly publication Creative Loafing, Hillsborough County Republican Party Chairman Jim Warishuk wrote, "Need some hangins," and shared a meme of 3 nooses with the words "Noose Flash, treason still punishable by death." Trump has lately accused those working against him of treason, and Trump is wrong. Treason is when you provide aid to an enemy of the United States. It's complicated, I know. Maybe there's some more criteria, but basically, the people who are trying to subvert Trump, that's not treason. That's something else, okay? If somebody broke the law to hurt Trump, that's not treason. If somebody gave private classified information to Russia or Iran to hurt the United States, that is treason. Actually, it might not even be, but probably is. We right now have some dude who spoke at a conference in North Korea about cryptocurrencies, and he's being charged by the FBI. I don't think he's getting charged with treason. I don't think so. Anyway, whatever. I'll leave it there. Stick around. I got one more segment coming up in a few minutes, and I will see you all shortly.